Good afternoon. My name is Alexander Brunner. I'm president and home of blockchain.swiss. We're promoting the Swiss blockchain and crypto ecosystem abroad. I'm very happy to have very distinguished guests on our panel that is called the Digital Asset Regulation. I think if I counted every time I heard the word regulation the last 3-4 years in crypto, I would have been a rich man. It seems to be a favorite topic. I'll do a very quick round of intro. I think it's easier if I do it. Some of you are very accomplished bio writers. First, we have Stephanie Wikihalder. She's president of the Swiss FinTech Innovation. Yes. And you're also a member of the Liechtenstein Bankers Association. So you're crossing this very, very small border between Liechtenstein and Switzerland. Next, we have Claudia Tesone from the University of Zurich, the Blockchain Center. You co-founded it. You're very active in the space. You've done Ethereum conferences and other conferences. Welcome. We have Tanvi Singh again. Again, as you've been on a panel in the morning.
Yes.
We're thinking having you. You're managing director at UBS. You've been involved in digital assets, in crypto. You've done AI. You've seen all that digital transformation. And last but not least, no panel is complete without a lawyer. So I'm happy to have Roland, excuse me, here. You're a legal partner at MME. I always have to check because there's also MML. No, you're MME. Oh, really? Oh, good. Yeah.
Yes.
You're an M&M. Good, but you're the lawyer, so you know all. You've been in the space active for many years as well. You've seen projects, you've seen developments. So what we'd like to address this afternoon. I don't know. Does this work? No, I think I have to tilt it better. Obviously, we're not going to spend only talking about regulation, but we want to talk about Switzerland, the world, and some interesting trends. And so we decided, as we're the second week of Bitcoin ETF trading, let's kick that off. It's been a hot topic. I've been reading press news from loving it, from people saying, this is it. Now Bitcoin off to the moon, ETF approved, to some others saying, and actually Gary Gensler, if you read his statement, he thinks Bitcoin is still for the same use cases, illicit trading, drug trafficking, terrorism financing. See, SEC clearly doesn't like it, but I'll throw that to the panel. Is it a big thing, the Bitcoin ETF? Is that a validation the industry has been looking forward to? Will now banks start offering crypto products, or is it a nothing burger? Anyone has an opinion to kick that off? Tanvi.
Yes, I can start. Now, I was just discussing this morning on a fun note that the ETF was approved at the time of CFC St. Moritz. So we heard all the wild parties that went in there because after 15 years, US has accepted the ETF Bitcoin. Unfortunately, now that we are here in Davos, it doesn't seem like that atmosphere is still around. But when it comes to the Bitcoin ETF, we in Switzerland always had one. So for us in Switzerland, it is not a big deal that it is, being recognized ETF worthy by the authorities and the regulations. But having this done in the Americas, it opens up the doors for the entire blockchain ecosystem to start getting some legitimacy. So overall for the industry, I think it has been a very long-awaited occasion and a milestone to achieve. So we do believe that would give a lot of authenticity towards the assets that were not considered valid legal assets in America.
I love that. I just jump in. As you'll see, I'll be promoting Switzerland. I have been invested in a Bitcoin ETP for many years here in Switzerland. Like we Swiss are like, what's new? But apparently the Americans are much better in narrative and making a bit drama out of it. But Claudio, your view?
Yeah, the only thing that I want to like to say is we have to remember that always the pricing of the assets, specifically crypto assets, has been all the time around adoption. There is a very high correlation between which is the availability of these assets to the market and which is the people that's able to access to this, and the pricing that eventually they hold. And that's why I think that and there is also always a very large threshold for people to be able to access these assets. I think that having this much more simplified framework in which people can just participate in the environment through this kind of financial instrument is something that accelerates but also powers the level of adoption that it can have. And this is something very beneficial just for the ecosystem.
we can actually find out who has bought a Bitcoin ETF in the room. Someone, at least one person, bravo. So there's room for adoption. So everyone else is with crypto wallets and crypto trading firms? Okay, good. Yeah.
The ATF audience is not going to be in this room.
I know. We're addressing the wrong panel. I just a very little side note. I updated my phone. I put the seed phrase into one of my wallets, and since then the wallet says 0 Swiss francs. And try to figure out how customer service works at the crypto exchange. But anyhow, so I'll stick with my ETPs. So I'm the second person holding an ETP. Anyhow, but moving a bit to Switzerland. Switzerland is a topic. We're in Davos. There's been a lot of discussion that Switzerland is crypto nation. We were voted #1 by CoinDesk last year. Is that really true? And maybe we will look towards the lawyer, as he regularly works with the regulator. Last night was a dinner where people praised the Swiss regulator versus the German regulator. But what's your sense? Are we really at the forefront, still at the forefront of adoption? Where is Switzerland stacking up globally?
I think we are still in a good position. I mean, forefront, it's always difficult. What is the forefront? Is the forefront basically where everything happens, but at one point in time it stopped to happen because it's not anymore accepted because of lack of due diligence or governance. But I think Switzerland is still in a very good position when it comes to sustainable development in Web3. So if you want to change something in the financial system when it comes to financial market infrastructure, I think there Switzerland is at the very forefront. When it comes to very, very disruptive ventures, I mean, I think Switzerland is also still in a very good position, but there is more competition because sometimes people always like to take risk over certainty.
I've been in crypto for 7 years. I come to you, Stefan, because I have a very specific question. For 7 years, I've been hearing the same question: is try and open a bank account if it says crypto somewhere in your company description. And that's still the case. I found out yesterday that in Germany, there's apparently, according to my source, one bank that does crypto fiat. One, if you're lucky. Switzerland is a bit more progress. But maybe as you, Stephanie, are wearing the Swiss and the Liechtenstein hat, can you fill us in? Are you here for Liechtenstein or for Switzerland? Or are you trying to join the two together?
I try to mingle.
Good.
No, actually, I would say for both countries. I mean, they're beautiful and well and deep, knowledgeable financial centers, right? So, and that actually follows what you said, Ronnie. I think both centers have a long history in financials, and in banking. So that's the best place to actually start. And both nations have this hunger to try something new, to really evolve, and to really try do something new. And the beauty of both countries, I must say it, and I experience it now in Liechtenstein, and I did for many years in Switzerland. The government is open to discuss, and the regulator, and that's a key component for both nations to actually really discuss what might be the next sensible step to make this thing moving. And this is something that's important for a financial center. And I must say, we at our association, we also had worked, and the beautiful Andra, the leader of the working group, is actually joining me here today. We have worked out a vision for tokenized finance in Switzerland. And it's really a paper. I can highly recommend it to read it. And we also identified a couple of things that are still missing at least for the Swiss nation. And as Liechtenstein is also belonging from a currency perspective to the Swiss National Bank, so it's applicable. At least one big point is the missing cash lag. And this is really something I think the Switzerland is now working on, and this is another example where the public and the private sector together try to do the next step. You're shaking. You agree?
Fully. Yeah. But I wanted to say something else, if I may. I think that what you said is right. I think that the government is important. All this forward-looking approach that the government have been taking. But you say something important, that is your own association. And I think that all the ecosystem also building up here in Switzerland and also in Liechtenstein is also very important to nurture exactly. I think that there is a very interesting feedback loop, that this is exactly your last sentence, this feedback loop between private and public that have been just fostering this very large ecosystem. That's why I think that this competitive advantage remains. Sorry.
I've maybe one question for Ronald before we're going to end up with UBS. Everyone has questions about UBS and the big banks. So you're aware of those questions. But Ronald, something interesting happened, I think it was last week, that FINMA changed its opinion about staking. I'm sure you heard about it. Can you briefly summarize what happened? Because I do believe it's a very nice showcase how the regulator here is adjusting its opinion according to what the industry is doing. But maybe you can give us a few words.
Yeah, so I think first we have to be careful in saying they changed their opinion, because I think according to the regulator's view, they have not changed the opinion. They just questioned whether custodial staking is a banking activity or not. And they questioned that during different events. So they held presentations and then put up some points where they said, if this and this happens, then likely staking results in a banking activity and is fully regulated. And then, of course, for the industry, because in Switzerland we also have a lot of staking service providers, including banks, everyone was upset and surprised, and they wrote papers that it is not the case, because on the one hand, for the banks, it would mean it's a deposit and they have to have own equity underlying the deposits, which with crypto is very high. And for the non-regulated, I mean financial intermediaries not being banks, they have a problem that they need to become a bank. And I think then the industry got together. They also got contact to the authorities in Switzerland, so they created a new desk, financial innovation desk. And I think then everyone looked at what is the position of FINMA and how it works in practice. And then the industry wrote papers together from legal and technical perspective, and they showcase that there are different type of protocols. I mean, there are delegated staking protocols and staking proof of stake protocols like Ethereum. And I think with delegated, there is usually not that an issue, because the assets will never be transferred. You just delegate by locking up. But with Ethereum, the problem is you have to transfer it to the node. And then it has been explained in short to the regulator that even with Ethereum, if you transfer the ETH to the node with a pre-signed message that you receive and a pre-definition of the withdrawal keys, you can make sure basically that the node can never run away with the ETH. So if the bank even is outsourcing the operation of the node, the outsourcing provider cannot run away with the 32 ETH that are on the node, because you have one, the pre-signed message for node exit, the voluntary node exit, and second, you also have a irrevocably defined withdrawal address, which is held then by the custodian in Switzerland.
Thank you very much. For everyone who hasn't completely followed, I'm sure Ronald will explain in more detail in the break. But I think there's two very important takeaways. First, that the regulator has been open to have discussions. I'm not going to claim he changed his opinion, but adjusted, whatever, the rulings that clarify probably and I want to be really sure the Swiss regulator has done a great job. And the second thing that highlights, and I think that we can talk about that when we have a bit the outlook of what's going on in Europe, it shows how technologically detailed those discussions have to be for the regulator. And often what I hear in the industry is like, and we're going to touch a bit later, is like MiCA's coming, the regulation in Europe is clear, everything's going to be clear. I'm very strong of the opinion there'll be many more discussions in the future, because the subject matter is very complicated. But tell me, one of the things we discussed, obviously crypto, digital assets, blockchain is often used interchangeably. And I know that UBS does a lot of work in blockchain and not necessarily in crypto. But maybe you share a few initiatives or what UBS is working on to showcase what big banks are doing.
And also, I'd like to add the role of FINMA and the regulators as it concerns us, since we talk to them also very often. So I do agree that they have been very supportive regulators, and it's a path of iteration when we come to regulations of a completely new technology, a completely new asset class like blockchain. So it's not going to happen on day one, and henceforth, Mika has just started. They would have to go through the journey that we have been still going on with FINMA now. So completely agree with Ronald. When it comes to projects within Switzerland, I think we can do a lot of great projects. You've seen the Credit Suisse and the UBS merger. The NFTs for the women footballers has been a very famous project locally here in Switzerland. It was domestically done and very well conducted and received by our clients across the board. So those are the kind of projects when it falls within the jurisdiction of Switzerland only. Very easy to do because we have the regulatory regime that supports us. Very well accepted by the local people here because we sell Bitcoin on post offices. So we are that kind of a country. We do not need an ETF to be approved like in the Americas. So those are the projects that has been very welcoming. We also sell fractionized gold onto our regular domestic apps. So the point I'm trying to make is when it comes to domestic activities, we as Switzerland, we as big banks have done a lot. And the regulators are very willing to talk in case of any creases in terms of implementing those projects in real life. Where it gets challenging is when you have to do things across the borders. And we as UBS being a big bank that is other than these domestic projects, when it comes to big money, when it comes to the structured products, we always have to hop off Switzerland. And that's where the projects gets complicated and difficult. Just between EU, what Mika is now proposing versus the Swiss laws we currently have, nobody has done the translation. In one of our structured product tokenization exercise, we were doing the translation between Hong Kong regulators, Singapore, and Switzerland. We did the project in a few weeks in terms of the technological availability on the testnet. It took us a year and a half to get the regulatory approvals amongst all the parties and the regulators, and then it took us a few months to finally release it on the mainnet. So with that story in line, definitely with the domestic projects and Switzerland's very friendly attitude towards this asset class, all the way from doing financial instruments to fractionizing art to fractionizing buildings, we have been able to do a lot. But within Switzerland, there is not enough liquidity that you can make this a full running program or a full running project because still we are a very small country.
I mean, you touched on a very interesting topic. I get those questions a lot is what does MiCA mean for Switzerland? Because as you said, we have a very robust, very clear ecosystem here in Switzerland. But obviously MiCA, the upcoming markets in crypto assets directive in the EU, is sort of a much bigger market, 450 million plus people. Is that an opportunity for Switzerland? Is it risk? I had a discussion last night with the CEO of a German-owned Swiss company, and he's very much on the fence. He says there are things in there that you have to be ESG, you have to report the carbon footprint of your coins, apparently. I was not aware of that. No one can do that or knows how to do it. So there's a lot of things in there that we haven't really paid attention to, but any ideas? I don't understand, Stephanie. I mean, MiCA must be a topic in Liechtenstein. Any first insights, assessment?
I wouldn't call it insight, or we're still in the phase of the assessment. But I always be positive, and I think there will be positive aspects on the MiCA side, but there will also be a lot of positive aspects on the Swiss side. However, let's be frank, right? Switzerland will get under pressure to at least have a answer to a lot of questions when we map the Swiss scheme against the MiCA scheme. And then we need to come up with answers when we interact with the European Union. So, but I think Switzerland will, as always, get stronger on that, and in its always pragmatic way find a solution. But we have seen it just as an example when it comes to the fintech registration in Switzerland. It has been under pressure and it's currently under review because also with the payment service provider license that we need to do something because the pressure was high from the European Union when it comes to crypto payment providers. So this is just an example, and I think it will be also a chance for Switzerland, but we also need to be aware that certain amendments to our scheme might happen, or further clarification, as we call it, right, from the FINMA in certain topics.
One of the comments I made before, and that was raised yesterday as well, is you can have a wonderful MiCA regime if you can't have a bank that is opening via crypto account for you, or you have crypto somewhere in the name. All of that literally doesn't matter. I mean, if you want to serve a wider financial system. So there's a lot of things that are still very unclear. And I think the other thing that's came up, and maybe you sort of been alluding to that, on me, the capability within the regulator. I heard a story, I can't say which regulator, it's a bigger country in the north. And he was tasked with giving an opinion, and he literally couldn't give an opinion on a crypto topic. And they had to hire a Big Four accounting firm or consulting firm because they didn't have the expertise. And that is I think a lot of people are totally underestimating what that means. You can have MiCA very soon. You knock at any regulator in the Eurozone store, they just don't know, how to handle that. But maybe that's, Claudio, you're doing a lot of education. Do you see more demand for education? Do you have regulators coming and trying to update their knowledge?
Yeah, I think that the problem that you were mentioning, you're right, Alex. The issue is that there is not enough qualified people. And this also has been a bottleneck for Switzerland itself. Even to develop further the ecosystem has been a problem, and specifically on the regulator side, is a challenge. You have been mentioning before what happened to FINMA. When you scale it up to an area like Europe, in which also I have to say that the universities or education system has not been developing as fast as here in Switzerland in this space. It is a huge challenge because you need to regulate a huge market without the competences to do that, and also shortening, even as per the last information, also shortening the timelines in which some of the operators need to clarify their status as well at the level of the European Union. So I also see that this is a huge challenge for the implementation of this law. Yeah.
Maybe approaching, and anything else on MiCA, any insights? Ronald, any opinion?
Maybe just, I think, so in my opinion, MiCA is a great opportunity for Switzerland because it's the same like the data protection regulation in the EU. I mean, the EU has an approach that they're not fostering innovation, but they're doing regulation and create work for the people in a country by having the large players regulated. Because I think even with MiCA, you're not creating innovation. And for Switzerland, it's the opportunity because people start here. And when they grow and when they are large enough, they also approach the European Union. And then they can be compliant with regulation. But as a startup, if you choose a jurisdiction, you're not going into a jurisdiction where you have to be fully regulated from day one. And that's why, in my opinion, MiCA is for Switzerland a good opportunity to distinguish it from other countries, so from Europe itself, but even being in the middle of Europe,
I think I'll also add a contrarian view. Perhaps the regulators in MiCA can learn a little from the regulations already in Switzerland, because right now, it seems like MiCA is theory, a good exercise for people to start understanding that things are not going to be unregulated forever across the European Union, but it's a slow process of learning. I think the two big regulators that have gone through that process of learning and experimenting and changing have been Switzerland and the MAS in Singapore. So we being so close to the European Union, we can also give that opportunity for the MiCA regulators to work together with us and have some lessons learned of what has happened over the years here in this country.
So we welcome any regulators from the European Union. Knock at our doors. We put in contact. We have wonderful, capable experts. It's just in my previous career as a banker, I still remember that Switzerland, when MiFID II came, there was a directive for financial instruments. Switzerland, the big banks, implemented all the rules before Italy back in the days ratified it. So one of the super skills of the Swiss is actually we're very keen about regulation. We have many lawyers and we like to figure out how it works. And I do think we will crack the code. We'll understand MiCA, and maybe we can teach the Europeans one or two things, and also our regulator. And a little side story as well, the director that was in charge of the whole crypto push in FINMA, his name is Mark Branson, and he moved on to BaFin. So he sits with the German regulator. So not all hope is lost. There's capable experts in Germany as well. But maybe you mentioned that, Stephanie, missing links. 10 minutes left, but maybe we take 1 or 2 questions at the end. But we're going to wrap that up. What is missing to move this ecosystem ahead? It sounds like we have a lot. We have now banks, we have regulation, we have the government, we have central banks. Are we on a journey to mass adoption, or are there still stumbling blocks? Anyone? Maybe Stephanie.
Well, as I said before, I think the one that's really important that is missing is the cash. Like, I haven't made up my mind whether it should be a stable coin, a deposit token, a retail CBDC. I see pros and cons for each. But personally, I think we need to move on. We need to create one to really start adoption and allowing for digital asset trading, and then the whole ecosystem can further grow. This is like what I would wish for. I know it's after Christmas, but
and there's already a small crypto Taliban going after the cash leg. If you follow online, some people are already gearing up against stable CBDCs and all that. So we have a lot of discussions. Claudio, from a research education point of view, any insights?
Yeah, I think that one thing that aspects is actually, I will say something obvious for me as professor, is education is a very important deal here. I think that we should not forget, there is something that is important, is we should not make fully transparent the blockchains as something that shouldn't exist at all. We need to understand not the technical underpinnings, but we need to understand actually that they are subject to some specific behavior of the main drivers of the platform that make them render less transparent. You have centralization, these kind of things, and we need to be aware of where we are trading, what we are trading, because it gives us a lot of information about the underlying asset that we are trying to look into. So education is one thing. Also, use cases, I think that still needs an additional spin.
Tanvi, as you remember from the morning session, you said basically ROI, no? Do you maybe you want to repeat it? Yeah, okay. You haven't changed your mind. That's good.
I haven't changed my mind since morning. It's the return of investments. We have started to see a lot of very creative and new companies coming into Switzerland that are very business oriented and not just in the deep tech side of activities. I'm particularly very enamored by the liquidity and the actual transactions going on Dower and Actionarat. In fact, in the last Algorand summit when we were on in India, October or November of last year, that was a big discussion. People were thinking of this to be done in 3 to 5 years, that you can get the private equity up on blockchain and that gets accessible to normal retailers like us. And they were very surprised to know that we are already running it for many years here in Switzerland. So we're also pretty novel in terms of these new forms that have been on paper, in white papers and concept papers and milestones for the future. And we've got to do that, much more of it, and perhaps become a learning ground for all the other big organizations as well as big countries to do the same. But as long as it is a return of investment, everything else is a pilot. People get excited about it a few months, and then it's all over.
Maybe just to spell it out, what he said, Actionarat is a Swiss company that allows you to tokenize SME shares. And for all the ones who are not familiar with them, you can literally issue your shares, you do the fundraising and your share registry on the blockchain. No other registry required. No white paper, nothing, no paper. And it's amazing, if check it out. The same exists for loans now. So this is really blockchain native financial infrastructure technology that is live and working here in Switzerland. But we had a discussion, the CEO said next to me last night, the same problem, cross-border, it works in Switzerland. The moment you go abroad, unfortunately, because of legal frameworks, it doesn't work. So that's still a problem.
Yeah, not even Germany, which is hard, because we have little borders in terms of the other trades we do. So MiCA and the Swiss regulators at some point have to gel well together.
They're actually trying to expand to Germany, and they have discussion with the German regulator, and it's a different experience than in Switzerland. From a legal, point of view, any insights?
Yeah, I mean, of course, from a legal perspective, I do not need any infrastructure, but I think what I see on the market, what Switzerland needs now is infrastructure where you can trade tokenized assets. And I think tokenization of shares or tokenization of financial instruments only makes sense if you also have a trading venue where you can trade them, because as long as you always have to go into the traditional system, it's always a question whether it makes sense or not. And I think for Switzerland, it will be crucial that in 2024 we will get the first security token exchange approved, which will be very likely. And I think then it will be very interesting to see whether actually the race of tokenized financial instruments continues or whether it gets lost to traditional technology. But I think without having a market where you have liquidity, tokenization of financial instruments doesn't make sense.
Very much agree. There's one company is on this. There are two companies, to my knowledge, that are journey on this licensing process, and one has started as a trading venue, and it's called Rule Match, and they're going to do tomorrow a session. If you Google it, you find them. Check it out. You get the latest what's happening in Switzerland about crypto trading venues, spot trading venues. A very interesting topic now that we also have ETF. So I got to take one or two more questions. I got the time signal for 5 minutes. Anyone? Sandra.
Controversial. Is that okay?
Oh, I love that.
I'm going to go back to the banking practicalities because it's the same problem in the US. If people can't open bank accounts easily, how are they going to do business? I'm going to stop the wet signature requirement. I will not go there. But how do you solve that problem? And if the regulators are listening, is it a regulatory thing or is it a banking problem?
It's a regulatory thing because with the advent in technology, not just speaking for UBS, but most of the banks, we can do video calls and it's all acceptable. When it comes to some of the high-risk companies, especially anything that has to do with blockchain crypto, for now, they all have to go through the wet signature process. And that's been requested by the regulators.
Maybe I can jump in there because I help foreign companies setting up here in Switzerland. And one of the you touch on it, you still for certain documents they need to physically signed. And the banks are required to do really in-depth due diligence of beneficial ownership on a level in Switzerland that seems to be higher than in other countries. So the feedback I get from the banks is actually it's the cost of due diligence for onboarding certain beneficial owners that just makes it not viable as a business. It's too costly. The amount of time. If you were a simple company with 2 Swiss shareholders living in Switzerland, then it's easy. The moment you have foreign entities, and I've been through this process, it's literally sometimes very cumbersome. And Sandra, you're nodding because you know this experience. You have to go for physical signatures from certain people, and that can become a problem. And that is often the real problem. It's not that they're per se, they might not like crypto, but the bankers I know, they like to make money, most of them. You know, if you have...
It's also the sector,
Yep.
right? There are certain sectors. If you are into mining, if you are into anything to do with tobacco, if you're into crypto. So those sectors are the ones that gets through the bigger KYC requirements.
But setting aside the wet signature requirement, it's actually difficult to open a bank account altogether. How do you ease that for businesses, especially startups?
You mean in general?
Yeah, in general. Is it easy to open a bank account in Switzerland?
So if you're a Swiss-only entity and you're a Swiss startup, I can't remember the name of the portal top of my head, but they have, as of last year, made all the full process of a startup, if you're a sole proprietor or an LLC or an AG or and GmbH, not an AG, which is the highest level of company formation you can make, then you can do all of this through an online platform. So there's a lot of effort that's now coming into that exercise, but unfortunately it would be limited to the Swiss-only companies.
I'd just like to add, when you have, as Tanvi said, like certain sectors, and crypto certainly belongs to that. Let's be honest, not every relationship manager or compliance manager has the same level of understanding on what exactly is your business case. And it sometimes circles back then just for an understanding on your business case to really have this account opening approved. And it's not always on bad will, I must say, from the banks, but it's as you rightfully said, it's a learning curve for all of us, and we're in that together, right?
Perfect. Just one last word from I've been advising companies to do that, and it's unfortunately correct what Stephanie says. You have to be very specific in your business case. You write it out about the beneficial owner, who's involved, and that is sometimes startling to people because they're like, I just want to open a bank account. Unfortunately, the bank nowadays really want to understand. And there are certain banks that are more entrepreneurial, and I know them and I know the people. So it's a Swiss thing. You need to know the right people. With that, thank you very much. Come to Switzerland, reach out to us, and we're happy to answer questions.